Did you know there is one thing that practically all Americans agree on, and it is do not murder your political opponents. Don't do it. 98% of Americans agree on this. The fact that you can get 98% of Americans to agree on anything right now is wild. Good job, everybody. Now, where we get lost is a lot of Americans also believe that people who disagree with us politically are down for murder, which is not correct. Less than 2% of Americans of any kind believe that's okay, so that's bipartisan. But there's a broad misunderstanding and a belief that people who disagree with us politically do approve of political violence, and so everybody's kind of freaked out right now because of that misunderstanding. We got to talk about the Charlie Kirk situation. Got to talk this one out because I grew up Mormon, and so did the suspect who was arrested for this. I'm not going to put him up on the screen because we're not trying to give him fame and airtime. From the info and allegations we have at the time, it seems that he knew what he did was wrong and should be tried as an adult with full due process. But I want to talk this one out because this guy looks exactly like a lot of the Mormon men and boys that I grew up with, went to BYU with. He's got that mo face, and he looks like family. I've got a lot of friends and family who also grew up LDS. Some are still participating. A lot of normal, mellow, mature adults in there, and some of them, their lives took a bit of a turn. And there are some echoes with the turns their lives took and what info we have about the suspect here. And we're still getting info. A lot of the info we have now may change or get updated, but I want to talk this one out. And especially because we're hearing a lot right now from right-wing commentators who are upset that Mormons are too soft, and that's why this happened. I don't know that too soft is the criticism I would make of a community where randos can just 200 yards, but that's just me. To have a really high-profile murder like this, and the person who did it looks like family, is a lot to sit with, and I really hope we do. Because while his story takes a more extreme turn than most, the arc of his life is really familiar. And it's something that people who grew up LDS and very conservative and who aren't anymore have been trying to warn our families about for ages. And that is how the way Mormons raise kids can really prime those kids for radicalization in any number of directions. They're just primed for radicalization with anything. And I want to be clear, this is not about blaming the suspect's parents. He is of age and can answer for himself. And in Mormonism, kids really get raised by the whole village, and that is something that is a huge strength when it works well. When it's not working well, it is really hard to fix because it's not something individual parents can change about how they raise their kids. The whole community has to be on board, and that can be really tough because that means we need to have some tough conversations amongst ourselves about how we're doing things. Growing up in the church teaches you that there is one way to live. You must do well in school. You must go on a mission for years and pay for it yourself. You must get a good white-collar job to pay for a big family or marry the guy who does. You must have the big family, and you must be happy with all of this. Because that's God's plan to make us happy, and if you're not happy, if you're tired, frustrated, if you miss any of those milestones, then you are doing something wrong, and then we're not sure what to do with you. So you know what's not in there is anything different, off the beaten path. That means there's no room for debate or learning how to do debate. There's no room for negotiation or learning how to negotiate with other people. There's no navigating any other way of doing things or learning how to navigate other people with other ways of doing things. And that doesn't leave a ton of room to build emotional intelligence, patience, resilience, or forbearance, figuring out how to live and let live with people who are different, or how to be the person who is different. Now, here's the problem. A lot of the people who grew up Mormon don't stay that way for a lot of reasons. For a lot of people, it's when you fall off the track of that perfect life and realize that a lot of your friends and even your family were fair weather friends. They loved you and supported you as long as you did exactly what you were supposed to. For some people, falling off that perfect track is just struggling in school or failing out of college. For some people, it's not going on a mission. For some people, it's realizing that you're not straight or finding out the people you love aren't. It could even be that you are deep in heterosexual love with somebody who's just not Mormon. There are a lot of ways to disappoint your fellow Mormons. And when you do, there's some shunning. And it's not that they don't like you anymore. It's that they just don't even know how to relate with you anymore. There's an invisible tie, and it's broken. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't the end of the world. Plenty of people part their ways with the Mormon traditions and start their lives over, but it is just a little shock to the system, if you can imagine. And what a shock to the system does not do is teach you those skills of emotional intelligence that you're missing right away. Patience, resilience, and forbearance for saying, I don't agree with that guy over there, and I'm just going to live and let live about it. Those are skills that I think a lot of us take for granted, but they are skills, and they take years to build. And a lot of us are raising a lot of kids without some or all of those skills. And I want to make sure that we understand this is not just about Mormonism, right? This is about a lot of conservative religious communities. A lot of the reasons that Mormonism is the way it is trying to fit in with all these other conservative religious communities. I want to be clear, what we're talking about here is a big old tent. Anyway, it's really easy to grow up LDS missing some key social skills, and I think that could be why we can get a reputation for being a little weird. Missing some key social skills or being a little bit behind on them can do that for you. Now, what we are raising kids with is a lot of guns and very good training on how to use them because, those deer ain't going to hunt themselves. So here's a thing that people who grew up Mormon and aren't anymore find ourselves having to do quite a bit. That is, finish raising other people's adult children. When a Mormon kid falls off the perfect track and the adults in their lives don't handle it well, which happens a lot, they need grown friends who can start teaching them those skills of emotional intelligence and patience real quick. Because these people are in a really difficult transition period in their life. And if you don't have those skills, going through a difficult transition, a lot of folks just curdle. You get someone who is angry and doesn't know what to do with those big feelings. They don't have the skills to handle them. They may have stumbled into a couple of newfangled opinions they didn't grow up with, but they still don't have the life skills to really live out those values. They're still working on right-wing programming. You don't just undo 20 years of how you were raised in a year or two. That takes time. And it can take a lot of time because a really devout Mormon upbringing will give you such a strict blueprint for life that you don't really need other social skills. You don't have to navigate decisions with other people all that much because so much of your life and their lives is already decided for you. You don't have to talk it out. So it is a lifestyle that really can leave people without a lot of the skills that it takes to navigate public life. And just because someone realizes, hey, Mormonism isn't for me, well, great, but that doesn't mean you have the skills to live a different life on the outside yet. Until you learn new ways of building relationships with people who are different from you, of being out in public life, you're still kind of stuck in black and white mode, where there is one right answer. We're going to make sure everybody knows it, and also there's guns. And I want to be real clear here. Most of the time, people sort themselves out, at least a little bit. Usually the worst case scenario is they become angry libertarians. Shout out to the millions of ex-Mormons who don't assassinate people about it. But this is something that we have been warning our families about for ages. That the rigid, black and white, just do what you're supposed to and that's it, don't worry about it lifestyle is not preparing our young people for real life. And it's not just a problem because sometimes young men get angry and radicalized. It's also a problem because all that sexual abuse that keeps happening in the church just keeps popping up. It's not a weird little coincidence. That is just what happens when you teach little kids that the most important thing they can be is obedient. And when you fail to teach men and boys who are growing up to become men about empathy and in empathy. I am hopeful that something worthwhile can grow out of this. It can lead to real conversations in the church about how we're raising our kids, about how maybe we should really lock down that everyone is a child of God emotional intelligence angle, then train on guns. We could talk about how the church's decision to try and be accepted by the rest of the religious right by going all in on this right-wing conservative culture has been shredding our families for decades. And what has it gotten us? We've been carrying the right wing's water for a long time. And what has it gotten us? It hasn't been good for our families. It hasn't been good for our problems in our church. I think a lot of people thought all during the Reagan Revolution, if we are all in on this, we're going to get a Mormon on the Supreme Court. Ain't happened yet. Conservatism in the U.S. would not be where it is without countless hours of unpaid, thankless footwork by Mormons. And I hope we see how, after decades of all that work, they do not hesitate to turn on us instantly. We are never going to be good enough for these people. I kind of think back on, the things that we're supposed to believe as a people, like families are forever. Political movements are not forever. They come and go, they're here and gone. Families are forever. And I look at how many Mormons have sacrificed their family relationships, have disowned their kids for being gay, over a movement that's here today and gone tomorrow. It's real easy to make cute little TV commercials about how families are forever. But how do we actually live? I'm also concerned that none of those conversations are going to happen because there's always a real easy way to avoid all that. And that's just blame the outsiders. The gays corrupted that kid, just like they always do. And that is easier than having real conversations with ourselves about how we're raising our kids and why. I want to close out with this. 98% of Americans agree that murdering people over politics is wrong. That's bipartisan. I'm very happy to be part of that 98%. We are all in good company out here. It's becoming clear from the info we have available that this suspect wasn't part of any organized effort. There's no gang or militia out there. He is a guy who acted on personal grievance and will face personal consequences for what he did. That's why we had this whole talk just now about teaching kids emotional intelligence and coping. This is premeditated and organized. Now remember, what we know is 98% of Americans agree that murdering people over politics is wrong. So if you want to turn everyone in the country against you, this is the fastest way to do it. Let's all get out there and make good choices today, folks.